I've been telling these guys for a long time, but you know what? It's time for me to do something that nobody else has ever done before. And that is just to walk up on the street, walk up and just talk to pretty women and ask them questions about nice guys, ask them how they feel about pickup lines, ask them how they feel about the friend zone, and how they feel about dating. I felt all I do is go around and ask these women these questions. And I think we ran into 6. I mean, I don't really have that much time, but when I get out, I go out and I talk to women. I was lucky. One asked me to come to a place, and I went to a place, and we sat down on the couch and talked. But it's women telling you the same things we've been telling you, but you're hearing it from them. You're not hearing it from me. They're telling these guys that they don't want men. Not men. They don't want weirdos. They love real men. They don't want boys. And they explain how you get in the friend zone by your actions and the phone numbers and the pickup lines. And that's the thing, guys, you really don't understand. If you really think that those pickup lines work, why don't you ask your teacher or whoever's teaching you the BS? Why don't you ask him, well, what happens what if I walk up to somebody who's already heard it before? What do I do then? See, and that's one of the things that you guys will realize. The average woman gets hit on hundreds of times, so she's heard it all. The average beautiful woman hears it 1,000,000 times. The average stripper who's in the strip club, who you guys think can use stripper game on, she is one of the alpha females that have heard it all. And when they hear you coming from that way, when they hear you coming with a pickup line, they've automatically thrown you in the category with all the losers. You know, there are even guys that you see, you know what, he's a loser. Well, guess what? When you do that stuff, you fall into that category automatically. You don't think you're in there, but you're in there. You're in there with the gay friend. You're in there with the buddy. You're in there with that sick pedophile guy. You're in there with the losers. You go into that category because why? They've heard it before. And like we talked earlier, there's some women that say, you know what? You want to lie to me? You want to play the game? Well, let's play. And let's see who comes out on top. You are an ATM machine. I'm going to take your money. I'm going to take your bills. I'm going to take you for everything you got. And guess what? You're going to give it to me because you lied to me. You started this whole thing off with a lie. I'm going to end it with a lie. I'm sorry, Frank. I was getting in the moment, man.
That's beautiful. This is exactly what we want. That's exactly what we want. Well, I mean, you getting into the moment is what I want. We don't want women taking advantage of anybody. We don't want anybody. No, we don't. Okay, we don't want anybody taking advantage of anybody. Now, that's a very good point that you brought up. You know, asking these guys who are teaching the pickup lines, okay, what do you do if they've heard it before, and they pretty much just try to brush it off?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, here's a question. You brought this up earlier, the idea of when people are questioning guys who have been experienced in the game. Something that I wrote about in my autobiography, From Loser to Seducer, and that is, whenever I was looking to learn game and I met a guy who, he had the credentials, he had the life experience, and he was willing to sit down and talk to me, my rule was, shut up and listen.
Yes.
And this is something that when I became a teacher in this, there is such a mistrust, and I can understand there being a mistrust. You obviously want to check somebody's credentials.
Yes,
but I've often found that a lot of these guys want to be argued into submission. And when I meet a guy who wants to be argued into submission, I say, look, I've written this much. Every experience that I've had, I have put into writing. You can read this, you can read this, you can read this. All of my work is autobiographical. And what they want is to argue about the way things should be. Well, it shouldn't be that way. Well, I'm not here to tell you how things should be. I'm here to tell you how things are within the scope of my experience and how I got through it. I recently just dumped a student for exactly that reason. Because no matter how many times I said, look, I understand that you're still trying the same old behaviors and the same old thing that you've done before. It hasn't worked for you. Now, 3 years later, you're coming back to me asking me the same questions you asked me 3 years ago. You haven't done the work. You haven't done the homework. Why are you here? And he says, well, and he started giving me all these excuses, and I said, that's it. You're not allowed to ask me for advice anymore. And I cut him off. And that was that.
Right. Wow.
Now,
you know what, man? Oh, sorry.
Now, I got two questions for you. When it comes to the Alpha Syndicate, how are you going to weed out the guys who are just there so that they can feel like they're doing something, but who, in fact, aren't really there to learn or change? And number two, the other question I have, sometimes the questions they have are legitimate. How do you tell the difference between someone who has a legitimate question and somebody who's just looking for reasons not to learn? You know what? We're going to go to a commercial break right now. When we come back, we're going to answer those two questions and then go into what's wrong with the men out there today.
Okay.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. We'll be back right after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the program How to Build a Social Circle Network, the 3 stages of the Frank Point Man system. It's who you know, but do you know how to get to know these people you need to know who are the ones in the know? Well, now you will know with this Frank program. Find new friends, make new lovers. Was this the year that you promised yourself that you would be more social? Create new bonds of friendship and family and have a social life? Maybe even find the one, or many. Ever wonder what makes a person the life of the party and an example of charisma? Do you know how to manage secret sex between friends so that your social circles are always maintained in your favor? This program teaches you all of that and more through Frank's original Point Man system, a 3-stage process to building and managing multiple social circles. How to build a social circle network, the 3 stages of the Frank Point Man system. On sale now at franktalks.com.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
You're listening to Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles. I'm Frank, because I have to be. We are having a solid discussion. It's me and Steve the Dean Williams. Steve the Dean Williams of School of Dating, schoolofdating.com, who is about to open up the Alpha Syndicate. When we last left the Dean, we were talking about answering 2 specific questions. I'm going to repeat those questions, and then I'm handing the mic over to the Dean. The first question, in the Alpha Syndicate, how is Steve the Dean Williams going to weed out those guys who are just there because they want to feel like they're making changes, they want to feel like they're doing something, but who are not ready to commit to making the changes necessary? And the second question I have is, how do you tell the difference between someone who has a legitimate question? He's not there trying to find creative avoidance techniques to stay away from changing. He's there asking very serious, very respectful questions. How do you tell the difference between a legit student and someone who's just there wasting time? So I hand the mic over to you now, Steve the Dean Williams.